favorite game last year was Mario and Luigi Brothership, and it was my priority for the last several months to kind of emphasize just how ridiculous the backlash towards that game was. You know, I called out beat 'em ups, I called out IGN, I kind of emphasized over and over and over again that game was an absolute masterpiece, one of the best RPGs I've ever played in my life, and you know, it just really strongly emphasizes just how much the general gaming community will bend over backwards to downplay really genuinely fantastic Nintendo games. You know, it was my focus for a long time to talk about Mario and Luigi Brothership. My second favorite game last year was Mario Party Jamboree. You know, a fantastic return to form for Mario Party, the best game ever produced in the series, and it came out, people ignored it, people tried to downplay it, they tried to write this off and say it wasn't a big deal. And considering like the state of Nintendo in 2024, when like, you know, everyone was like spurging out about Princess Peach Showtime and Mario and Luigi Brothership, I didn't talk at length about how much I love Mario Party Jamboree because it didn't feel necessary. Mario Party Jamboree was this hugely successful game that sold a lot and clearly had a lot of enthusiasm behind it in the actual community. The simple fact that Pretendos overlooked it at the time meant that I didn't really feel the need to address it and talk about it at all. But the gloves are off. Like, we need to talk about Mario Party Jamboree because it seems because of the recent re-release on Nintendo Switch 2, because of the content update with Jamboree TV, a lot of people now feel comfortable coming out and trying to write this off, the best Mario Party ever, mind you, as a disappointing release. And it seems as if our Muppet Arlo has come out and tried desperately to turn this into a thing, to turn Jamboree TV into some kind of controversy.
Just a little bit. This video is a lot like the one I did for Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. It started out as a simple review of Super Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition plus Jamboree TV, but as I worked on it, the project evolved in scope, because you see, there's something about this Switch 2 Edition that, to be honest, is slightly unsettling. Once again, though, we should begin with a brief review portion of the game, just so I can say that I have given my thoughts on the actual content of the game, or rather the new content in this Switch 2 Edition. I didn't play a ton with friends, I didn't try out the new rule sets, I really just wanted to play the new mini-games and check out the presentation and whatnot.
Arlo did not play with friends. He did not engage with the new rule set. So, right off the bat, we are being told by Arlo, straight to our faces, that he did not engage with the game in a satisfactory way. You know, he did not engage with the content in the way you're supposed to engage with it. It's a party game. You're supposed to play with other people. You know, like, that's the core appeal of the game. So Arlo's sitting there going like, well, the mini games aren't very fun to play by yourself. Like, yeah, because you're not supposed to.
I started with Bowser Live, and I gotta say, it did not make a good first impression. I mean, presentation-wise, I guess it did. The Switch 2 has bumped up the visuals a bit. You know, looks a little sharper, some nice texture work. Really, it's the animation that shines here. Bowser himself really plays to the crowd, like he's clearly having a great time being the star of this show. It's an opportunity for him to be on screen a lot, and he's really expressive. Boy, these games are not fun, though. I had no idea there were only 3 microphone games and 3 camera games. That is not even almost enough to make for a whole dedicated mode. And you choose which kind you want to do at the start, and it spins this roulette to choose the next game, and you can see that it's spinning between only 3. And it's like this long, what's it gonna be? Like, you're gonna play 2 out of the 3 every time. It's so weird. And the presentation is good, but if anything, that just makes this feel even more awkward when you consider how lackluster the games themselves are. All this hype for these really underwhelming Kinect iToy style minigames. As for
These features were introduced to demonstrate the Switch 2's unique technological capability that were not possible on the Switch 1, right? This is essentially a tech demo. You are complaining about tech demo features in a Mario Party game.
Microphone games, the one where you all shout to drive a little car forward without going too far, is the only kind of good idea, I would say. You're all working together, but you don't want to shout too much, so it's kind of an interesting dynamic when you're in a group. But that's really it. Using your voice to make Bowser Jr. float so he can grab the coins is, I mean, it's not fun in the slightest. And the one where you clap to the beat is ridiculously basic. And I don't know if it's my TV or what, but there is a humongous lag. I gotta clap way ahead of the beat for it to work, so there's another one that's just not fun at all. Then the camera games, it's basically the same thing. Stacking Goombas on your head is mildly amusing when it works. Hitting a block to get coins is whatever, and following the Talking Flowers instructions to either stand or squat is funny, like one time.
So I've played these games myself, and I can tell you for a fact that all of them work, and that Arlo's sitting there trying to say that, like, oh, the game lags and the timing isn't right and the game isn't fun. No, Arlo, that isn't true at all. Like, the games are all very, very fun. They're all very much in depth. You know, they all take skill. There's an appeal to what this game does. You know, it's a lot of fun to play this.
And then at the end, each team takes turns, like, screaming at Bowser, and he decides who screamed the best. That is a little cute, I guess. One time. And that really sums up the whole mode. I could see it being a little fun for, like, one night with one group of friends once. But that's it. So yeah, really not a great first impression. But fortunately, Carnival Coaster, the other major mode in Jamboree TV, it makes up for it a little bit. Riding on the coaster and shooting enemies is kind of fun. There are 5 different courses to ride with different themes, and they really play up the whole amusement park angle. If there's anything really wrong with it, it's that it's just too easy. The point of shooting enemies is to gain more time so you can reach the end, but there's like no risk at all of running out of time, in the slightest. So it becomes more about just getting a high score at the end, I guess. Fortunately, one of the modes does have you running away from Bowser, and if you don't do well enough in the mini games, you straight up lose, so that does help. There's a little challenge there. Speaking of the games, you know, the new mouse games, I'm a little surprised by how much I like them. I really didn't know if I would. I'm not big on gimmicky minigames overall, but you know what? These are decently fun. Some are definitely more fun than others. There are a few I could take or leave. The domino one. That one's really good. You all work together to place dominoes. I think that's a very clever idea. I actually wish this one had its own whole series of challenges like some of the other minigames in the base game. It's got really good potential. But yeah, overall, there's an okay little chunk of these new mouse games. It's a bit of a pain to have to play on a flat surface, but it's an okay time. Still not like super fun, but leagues beyond Bowser Live, that's for sure. Do I think this new content is worth the price of this $20 upgrade pack? Personally, I would say probably not. I still vastly prefer the other more traditional minigames and the other modes. If you're like crazy about Mario Party and you just love playing with friends a whole bunch, you just want as much as you can possibly get, then maybe you'll find this worth it. I really don't know. And really the value isn't exactly the point I want to talk about in this video, because there's something about this Switch 2 edition that stopped production of this review dead in its tracks when I learned about it. Maybe most of you will know about this already, but it was news to me. I didn't figure it out until I finally started digging into the game and doing research. So, if you don't know what I'm talking about yet, when you boot up the game, you can choose between the original Jamboree and the new Jamboree TV. These two modes are entirely separate. There is no crosstalk whatsoever. You can access the basic Mario Party mode from Jamboree TV, and this is how you play with the new rules variants and integrate the new minigames. Basically, you get all the new stuff like this through Mario Party mode in Jamboree TV. And this means that none of the progression systems of the base game are present. None of the records or unlocks or anything. So that's a bummer. And all the new content is right there, so there's no way to access any of that in the base game at all.
That's because the base game is on Switch 1, and Switch 1's one wouldn't be compatible with the Switch 2 features.
No way to incorporate any of the new stuff into the old experience. So yeah, already disappointing. Kinda weird. I guess I get that there's something of a compatibility issue between Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions of the game, and this was their way of cleanly separating the two. It's an awkward solution, but I sorta get it. Almost. Here's the real kicker, though. The upgraded presentation, the higher resolution, sharper textures, all that, not present in the base game. Right. Yeah, you heard me. Only Jamboree TV has better visuals. The base game does not. The base game is still essentially the Switch 1 version.
Not true. They do look a little bit better in the Switch 2 version.
Nintendo discourse has been a tad tumultuous recently. Nintendo has made some decisions this generation that have proven rather controversial, to say the least. Charging $80 for Mario Kart World, that really set the fire, I think. That scared people, and since then, there's been a really big shift in the community. There is a portion of the Nintendo fandom who have essentially turned on the company, who feel that it is now evil. It's such a big topic. I don't want to dig into every single thing. I think the situation is a lot more nuanced than most people think. That's why I'm a bit of a fence sitter here. I don't like everything Nintendo is doing, but I also see a lot of it as totally expected from a massive international publicly traded company in their position, considering the greater economic climate, all these monstrous, just unprecedented tariffs, making selling things in this territory more expensive than ever. Everything is getting more expensive. It's just a whole thing. And I am receiving some pushback for not being angry enough at Nintendo, for still supporting them at all. For just a couple examples, I was criticized for saying that Welcome Tour is fun, and that even if, yeah, it would have been nice if it was bundled with the Switch 2, it probably does provide $10 worth of enjoyment for the right person. People called me out for supporting an anti-consumer practice, but the thing is, I just don't see it that way. Like, what about 1-2 Switch? That was every bit as deserving to be a pack-in title. It was a minigame collection designed to do nothing but show off the features of the Joy-Cons. It had substantially less content and overall value than Welcome Tour, and they sold it for $50. 5 times as much, and in 2017 money. Where was the outrage there? Why was that okay? Yeah, sure, we grumbled about it, but why was that not worth boycotting Nintendo over? Why weren't the reviews filled with comments talking about the reviewers supporting anti-consumer practices?
Is Arlo really trying to rewrite history and pretend that 1-2 Switch wasn't an extremely controversial launch title for the Switch 1? Like, who is he trying to fool with this? No one who was there back then is going to believe this. Like, oh, there was no backlash to this game at all. Like, what are you talking about? Yes, there was.
I really don't like that they raised the prices of their accessories, sure, but again, in 2017 money, Switch 1 accessories were already absurdly, just exorbitantly overpriced. Like $100 for a dock, a glorified HDMI port, $80 for a pair of these little Joy-Cons? Again, we grumbled, but we bought it all. Look, I'm not saying it's wrong to be upset or criticize Nintendo, or even to stop supporting them completely if that's what you feel led to do. But I do feel like this narrative shift itself has begun affecting people's perception. We're looking at Nintendo through a different lens now. Nintendo has always done things we don't like. Just an uncountable number of things that we do not like over the years. They make us mad all the time. This is not new. Also, I do have to say, not liking something doesn't automatically make it anti-consumer. Some of this is disappointing or annoying, but not necessarily the sign of a company that has suddenly gone bad. It feels like for whatever reason or combination of reasons, enough of the conversation has turned bad that now the equilibrium is off. Now every misstep is scrutinized even harder. turned into an even bigger issue. Now it's a consumer rights issue. Now anyone who engages with Nintendo is anti-consumer. Now it's this great big war. Again, it's a much bigger subject I don't want to get super deep into here. I'm just saying that despite what some of the community may want, I'm not ready to boycott Nintendo. I still think if you look at their long history, in many ways, they have improved dramatically. Yes, they still do make disappointing choices, as they literally always have. Yes, great success is maybe spurring some less savory, money-minded decisions. Absolutely. And a really scary economic climate is spooking them into jacking up a lot of their prices, as with much of the entire world. But I still believe that there are still people at that company who are genuinely interested in making cool video games, and they are still a heck of a lot easier to support than other companies in their position. Like good guy Microsoft, sticking it to Nintendo and going back on their own $80 games, bringing prices back to a more reasonable $70. Right after firing 15,000 employees this year alone, despite record profits, and pledging to pursue AI more aggressively than ever. But I digress. Point is, I do have an anti-consumer barometer, and it is very much functioning, even if it doesn't go off as often as some of you would like. There are indeed times when Nintendo makes decisions that I think are very, very wrong. I will speak up when I feel that Nintendo has crossed into anti-consumer territory. And Super Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition has my barometer going crazy. In every other case we've observed so far, Switch 2 Edition has meant, at its most basic level, a Switch 1 game that has been reworked to run substantially better on Switch 2.
As we've already established, Mario Party Jamboree does look and run better on Switch 2. The issue is that it wasn't built up from the ground up for the console, which is why the Jamboree content looks so much different than the rest of it.
Some Switch 2 editions come with new content. Some don't. Some have higher quality textures and lighting, essentially acting as remasters in a sense, or rather, pre-masters. Some don't. But across the board, one thing at least has been promised: better performance. When you buy a Switch 2 edition, whether fresh from retail or through an upgrade pack, that is what you are promised. That is what is advertised. Maybe there's some fine print somewhere clarifying in this particular case, but that kind of thing does not hold up in court. There are consumer protection laws in place that disallow companies from tricking us through the use of fine print. Delivering what appears to be promised by the marketing is the most important thing. Switch 2 editions are marketed as Switch 1 games that run better on Switch 2. So calling this a Switch 2 edition is a case of blatant false advertising. And that is not a claim I throw around lightly. It's another term that maybe gets overused a bit, but it's absolutely valid here. Nintendo is basically tricking us with this game. This is a bait and switch, no pun intended. It's a bad enough case when taken all alone. If I were really invested in Mario Party and really excited to play Jamboree with better graphics, I would be positively furious right now. But as always, it's the implications that disturb me most. It's hard to imagine why Nintendo would fail to deliver on this promise. I truly cannot fathom a reason. I don't even have an educated guess, not so much as a shot in the dark. I get that the two modes are separate because of compatibility and stuff, but what does that have to do with the graphics? Why would that somehow prevent them from making the whole game run better? And why would they think that releasing the game like this is okay? How could they possibly believe that this was acceptable? Did they think we wouldn't notice? Is it because it's not quite like a Pokemon Scarlet and Violet situation where even a glance at the gameplay tells you something is seriously wrong? Instead, it's the kind of thing your average consumer might not even notice until they have the game in front of them. And by then, it's already too late. And if Nintendo's lucky, some of them might not notice at all? I don't like that idea. That really plays into the false advertising angle. I just have so many questions. It's so baffling that something like this is even possible. And of course, maybe the biggest question is, What does this mean for future Switch 2 editions? Is this something we have to look out for now? Is this going to be a thing? Trick Switch 2 editions? You break our trust once and suddenly we feel like we have to be on our guard.
I imagine this is the point behind this video, because everything up to this point was nonsensical and didn't make any sense. You know, everything he said in this video wasn't true at all. But like, this is the point of it. This is the why he's lying. This is why he's like trying to manipulate your takes. He is trying to devalue the Nintendo Switch 2 versions of Nintendo Switch 1 games. And this is actually pretty important, because a major thing about the Switch 2 is these upgraded versions. You know, they release updated patches to improve the gameplay of a lot of older Switch 1 games, including games like ARMS and Super Mario Odyssey. You know, they completely retooled Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom visually, you know, and now they're doing stuff like this with Jamboree and the upcoming Kirby, you know, with huge entire updates, you know, giving us new content and experiences. So Arlo, by extension, is trying to discredit a huge chunk of the Switch 2's library. We're already seeing people pretend that, like, the Switch 2 only has 2 games, Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. You know, they love to pretend that people aren't playing Breath of the Wild. They aren't playing Tears. They aren't playing Fantasy Life 2. All of which are, like, upgraded from the, you know, Hogwarts Legacy. All of which are, like, upgrades from the Switch 1 versions of those games. You know, like, they don't want to acknowledge, like, the Switch 2 versions of these games as being these huge system sellers. They're doing everything they possibly can to write them off and ignore them. And I think this is the purpose of this video. Like, Arlo is trying to discredit the credibility of these kind of releases. You know, trying to make them sound as if they aren't worthwhile, as if they aren't worth your time and your money, when in reality, they absolutely are.
Maybe you could argue that this only happened with Mario Party because of its 2 modes. It would be a little different if they'd given us Tears of the Kingdom and, like, only the sky had been given the visual upgrade. It's not likely that we're gonna get our hands on Kirby and the Forgotten Land Switch 2 Edition plus Star-Crossed World and find that only the new levels have better visuals. Right? I mean, I would hope not. Is Mario Party something of a weird exception thanks to how the game is formatted? Maybe, but it's kind of like the limited releases thing from back in 2020. For all we know, this is the last time this will happen. Just won't come up again for the foreseeable future. But it's still something we've got to worry about now. It sets a terrible precedent. Now we know that it is possible at all for Nintendo to give us a Switch 2 edition that doesn't actually improve the entire game. And this happened just a couple months after launch, right at the beginning of the generation. It doesn't bode well for the future. And you know what I feel makes all this even weirder, even harder to swallow? Super Mario Party Jamboree feels like the only Switch 1 game that was developed with its Switch 2 edition in mind. I mean, maybe with some other games, the devs knew that they'd get to do some sort of Switch 2 version someday. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. That's the only reason we never got major DLC for Pikmin 4 or Mario Wonder. But Jamboree, releasing so late in the Switch's life, with a Switch 2 edition announced right at the beginning of the next generation, was clearly built for this exact purpose. This was clearly the plan from the beginning. Give us a Mario Party in 2024 to capitalize on the gargantuan Switch 1 install base, then update it and give it exclusive content for Switch 2 to give that install base a shot in the arm. Best of both worlds, wins all around. I mean, honestly, up until now, I thought it was a genius strategy. It's just really so smart. So then, what gives? Why is this the one game that for some magical reason couldn't actually be updated beyond Mario Party mode? Food analogy time. It's like planning years ahead for the release of your fancy new aioli burger. You hype it up. You advertise the heck out of it. Come try our new aioli burger in 2025. And then when it comes time to launch, you realize you don't have any garlic. So you just give people the burger with regular mayonnaise and don't say a thing about it. You don't even acknowledge it. So what was the point of hyping up the aioli? I don't know, man. I take a lot from Nintendo. I mean, we all do. You just kind of have to accept the bad with the good if you want to play the video games. That's how it works with these big companies. But this is one burger that's a little harder to chew. Now, we do have to ask ourselves another question. Is it possible that Nintendo might patch the game later so that the whole thing runs better on Switch 2? Yeah, I guess technically. I mean, they've patched a whole bunch of Switch 1 games to run better on Switch 2 for free, so I don't see why they couldn't patch this game that people are paying for. Unless, of course, there is some sort of weird problem specific to this game, or this is one of those things where if they fix it, they have to acknowledge it was a thing in the first place, and it's better to just ignore it forever. I don't know, but yeah, if we're super lucky, they'll end up fixing everything and soothing our worries about future Switch 2 editions. I just don't think I'm feeling very confident here. They've already patched the game multiple times, but they've only fixed bugs and left the rest alone. And even if this does end up being one and done, never a problem again, just a weird fluke, it still positively stinks that Nintendo did it. It's one of those examples where people will be like, Nintendo's evil, and I'll be like, they're not so bad, and they'll be like, remember Super Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition plus Jamboree TV, and I'll be like, ugh. Right now, this is looking like one of those times when Nintendo has actually really screwed up. Individually, it's not the biggest problem in the world. It's just disturbing that Nintendo is willing to do something like this. And we just have to hold our breath and see if it becomes more of a problem down the line. And you know what's even worse? Not even one new board. Not even one. Mario Party games, they never get DLC. They would rather just move on to the next game. This was their one chance to update a Mario Party game, and we couldn't get one single new board.
So that was Arlo's video. Complete and total clickbait. Nothing he said in it was true at all. It was all hyperbolic and ridiculous and made no sense. Like, who is watching this guy in 2025? Who takes anything he says seriously? It's all doom and gloom and just make things like, oh, man, Nintendo could, like, go out to the street and shoot puppies. And it's like, wow. Like, how delusional can you get? This is a very good example of what I'm talking about when it comes to just how out of touch with reality the Nintendo community is, because this release was awesome. I am still playing Jamboree TV now. Because I never stopped playing Jamboree to begin with. Like, this is a fantastic update to the game that I'm gonna get a lot of mileage out of, and that I really, really love. Like, I don't understand Arlo's coping and seething. Actually, I do understand. Like, this is just about the views. This is just about the attention. This is just about, like, concern trolling about Nintendo in this period where it's very difficult to do so. We keep seeing people complain about the price while neglecting to mention the price of other pieces of hardware. PS5 Pros are now $700. You see people like complain about the games, even though they're better than the competition. And you see people complaining about this, these kind of like upgrades when these are handled way more consumer friendly, in a way more consumer-friendly fashion than the competition. Like, just look at how Sony sells The Last of Us remastered at full price on every single console. That's just an example, but that really showcases, like, what we're actually going up against when it comes to what the competition actually is. The upgrade path system for these games is very consumer friendly, and people like Arlo are just very unwilling to even acknowledge it, because this is not an $80 game. Like, if you bought the game to begin with, it's a $20 patch. It is a $20 expansion pack, and that is a perfectly reasonable price point for a game like this.